For those of you who dream of smoking the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning. But here's the big secret to lineups. It's all serendipitous, like Wendy's new limited edition chicken strips and French toast sticks. Sometimes the best teammates are the ones you'd least suspect. Sign up to play Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool to win weekly prizes like the new chicken strips and French toast sticks from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Let's bring him in. Frank Seravalli. Frank, before I get to my first question, I'll just let you, what do you have to say to me?
I actually didn't hear your take. I guess I
good.
must have been late, but I do. So, Irf, I will bet you a steak dinner that the Canucks play at least 500 hockey every single month the rest of the way.
That's what that was my take. I thought you would disagree. Let's go.
I've been saying it all along. First off, the Canucks are a good team. Second, 500 hockey is really nothing to speak of in today's NHL. It doesn't get you into the playoffs. It's actually not even close to the playoffs. And if the Canucks only played 500 the rest of the way, just a correction on your math, they'd end up with 95 points.
Okay,
not 92.
3 more.
But
so take that, Irv.
Are you on?
I'm not a math guy, I'll tell you that right now. Hey, you know I'm on, Frank. I'm always on.
Irf's always down for a good dinner.
I'm always down for a good dinner.
He always knows where to go.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, well, Frank, I didn't know you'd be on my side about this, so that leads me perfectly into my first question. Why do you think the Canucks are winning both the President's Trophy and the Stanley Cup this year?
I don't on either account. However, I do think the Canucks are a really good team. And I think that, Irf, you hit it right on the head when you said that they're still maturing and getting better right in front of our eyes. And I think with the boxes that they have checked, that they are going to be a formidable playoff team to go up against in the first round.
Yeah.
The Pacific is murderous. And it all depends on where it shakes out, because where do the Oilers slot in, assuming that they get in? Who would Vancouver face in round one? I mean, it's going to be a tough draw, I think, no matter what. But I think the Canucks are going to have a puncher's chance.
Yeah. I mean, look, I might agree with you there. I think that there still needs to be some improvement. I'm not sold on that bottom 6 forward group. And then after Hughes and Rodick and maybe, Cole and Soucy, that bottom 2 defense pairing isn't that great. But I mean, you don't have to play that much in the playoffs and when you get there, I guess. Frank, I guess my question to you is, how much does Jim Rutherford, I know, and him and Patrik Allvin have done a lot of work to improve this hockey team, but how much more might we see coming as we get into, obviously, after Christmas and maybe into the trade deadline? Like, you look at this team and we talk about playoffs, but how active might they be?
I think they're going to be pretty active. I mean, Look how aggressive they've been to this point. And some would say that they've tinkered around the edges. I would say that they've made a bunch of really smart bets to stack little incremental 3 to 5% wins on top of each other that have really been difference makers for this team when it comes to the results that we're seeing on a night-to-night basis. I think the big question is, look at someone like Kuzmenko, who we've talked about. There's been lots of talk. Is he out there and available? Are the Canucks going to move him or not? I think it's a bit premature for that. I don't have any evidence to this point yet that he's someone that they're interested in moving. But let's say this continues on, where he's someone that is clearly a square peg in a round hole for this team. Think about the cap dollars in play. Think about how other teams might view him. And then think about some of the other upgrades that you might be able to make across your lineup if you were to ship someone like him out. So I think this front office is eager and open to do business. I think they're willing to shake things up and question the status quo. The reason why I'm not ready to make any bold proclamation is because I'm not entirely sold that the rest of the NHL is on the same page.
I'm so curious about this, Frank, because it's a really good point. And then you think about this Rutherford Allvin regime. They've had a pretty firm eye on the future while retooling their team. Obviously, they moved a first-round pick last year, but they had another first-round pick to use. They only got one this year. Do you get the sense that that might be in play at the trade deadline?
I guess tell me where this team is at in the standings. Tell me what they might be able to get their hands on. I don't see the Canucks being a team that's going to be out there pounding the pavement and saying, hey, we're going to move our first-round pick to get a rental back in return. But if you could find someone, and looking at the playbook and probably how it's not going to be duplicated again based on the success that they've had with Roenick, like if you could find someone that fits your age scheme, that could be part of your team for a while, that can help you now and for the future, I don't think the Canucks would blink for a second and they'd put that first round pick in play. They've had too many first round picks, too many, by the way, that haven't panned out. And I think it goes to show you that if you can be aggressive in the moment and make a game-changing move to help you now and for the future, that's the way to play it, as opposed to, especially if you're a playoff team and picking at 22 or 24, you're dealing with a hope bet at that point.
Yeah, I don't think the first round pick will be in play. And I do agree with you, Frank. You're not making moves just to get a rental to try and win a playoff round. I think it's got to be, I think this management group's a lot smarter than that. What's been the talk around the league about the job that Rick Tocchet's done with this group? I know, he came in and obviously people know his mentality and the way that he coaches, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Rick Tocchet's job that he's been able to do with this team.
Yeah, I think it's been incredibly impressive. I think the buy-in that he's gotten from the team has been important. I think he's been able to help mold and shape some of the pieces that have come in. I think, to me, to really understand Rick Tocchet and the attitude and persistence and drive that he has to get better, like, he's no nonsense. You show up, you're ready to work, and if not, you're not going to be part of the mix. And I think you look for me at someone like JT Miller, and we talked about him quads last week and his impact, and we're talking about unsung heroes, and it's kind of hard to say that, the leading scorer of the team is an unsung hero, but it's not a foregone conclusion, essentially, what you'd be getting out of JT Miller at this spot, given where he was 1 year ago, when it looked like he didn't really care, when it looked like he might not be engaged at every moment. To see that buy-in from him, to see, like, Rick Tocchet has had a real long, sustained history in the NHL of getting the most out of players that were sort of deemed difficult to deal with. Phil Kessel is his shining example. He was the Phil Kessel whisperer in Pittsburgh. That, not to equate the two, but that he's been able to squeeze as much out of Miller as he has, I think is a real big, he deserves a tip of the cap for that. Like, that's been a big part of this season's success. And you could just tell being there at training camp this year that this team meant business. I think the Ian Cole addition has been huge. And I think he's someone that obviously understands Tocchet and Rutherford and their view, and has a 9-year playoff streak on the line, that he came to Vancouver with no idea of giving up on that he wanted to push that to 10. And I just think the whole mood around this team has been different, in large part to their coach.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, when Rick Tocchet was hired, there was rumors that, they did this because they needed to reel JT Miller. Rick Tocchet was getting questions about JT Miller and how he was going to manage this player in his intro press conference as Canucks head coach. He was getting questions about JT Miller. He was ready for those questions. Like, he talked about how he was a similar player to that. And look, the relationship between those two guys is obviously very well chronicled. Do you have any final Canuck questions? Because I want to move around the league a little bit.
No,
okay.
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Frank, what the hell's going on in Colorado? We see this from Taves. We hear about Lekkonen's dad. Like, what is going on in Colorado right now?
It's going to sound funny to say, and normally I'd rather pour gasoline on the fire than tamp it down. I kind of think this is much to do about nothing. The Lekkonen thing, I think, was motivational fuel for one day for Mikko Rantanen, who him and Lekkonen are pretty close. I happen to also know really well Lekkonen's father, Ismo Lekkonen. He's been to a number of Stanley Cup finals in a row, which I'm almost at every year. And I've spent lots of time with him, meals and beverages. And he's not really one of those guys that is up for the drama or to really play something up. And so I was kind of surprised to hear those comments. I think, in part, at least listening to Ismo Lekkonen and him tell his side of the story, that they're probably taken a little bit out of context. But it's sort of like, some of the best players in the world, think back to Michael Jordan, the tiniest slight is enough to get you going. And for a guy that hadn't scored in 9 games, He goes out and has a 3-point night and then sort of says afterwards, like, hey, thanks, that was for you. When it comes to Devon Toews and his comments, definitely a little bit surprised. And I feel like any team that loses to the Blackhawks, who basically have like 12 legitimate NHL players on their roster, like it's not many more than that. And that team wins, and Connor Bedard's able to help lift that team to a victory on home ice with really little support, that it probably really sticks in everyone's craw a little bit. And you see some of the frustration come out. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking at the Avs this year. They're tied for first in their division. I know that they've hit a tiny skid the last 10 days here, but does anyone really have any concern for the Avs and their ability to be a dominant playoff team?
Well, that's kind of why I look at it and say, okay, this might what you said might be much of nothing, but how much have they missed Gabriel Landeskog's leadership? I think that's my question there. I mean, I know you have McKinnon and he's a superstar in this league, but how much have they missed the leadership of their captain?
I say this with all due respect to Gabriel Landeskog, but the Colorado Avalanche are Nathan McKinnon's team.
No, 100%.
And
it's just like here, I think in Vancouver, I think they're JT Miller's team.
You could wear whatever letter you want. I happened to be around the Avs a couple weeks ago, and I was standing in the hallway, and someone said, hey, what time's the bus? And someone replied, whenever McKinnon says it's time. I mean, that he's like quite literally driving the bus on that team, on the ice, off the ice. He's pushing everyone, pushing different buttons. It's clear that Jared Bednar obviously listens to him and takes his counsel. So I'm sure there's some part of Gabriel Landeskog and his experience being a captain at such a young age in this league that, you know, there's a calming influence that comes with that. But it's a hard question to answer because it's also been a pretty long stretch of time that they've been without Landeskog.
Frank, we'll close it on a Canucks question because the chat has a few for you. But this is one that's kind of been thrown around recently is Nikita Zadorov's next contract. One, do you think it'll be with the Canucks? And two, what do you think he signs for?
One, I don't think it'll be with the Canucks. I think he's going to end up being a rental, and I think probably at the price the Canucks paid, they're fine to use him as such. Obviously, they're certainly interested in the player, though, so I certainly wouldn't want to rule that out. But it certainly sounds like, listening to Zadorov, that he believes he's in a different stratosphere contract-wise than I think most of the rest of the league views him. And that's a big reason why the Calgary Flames were never really seriously contemplating keeping him, because he wants more than they believe he would deserve on their blue line, which is mostly in a third pair role. And so I can't really ballpark an AAV and what that looks like. Like, my guess would be somewhere between 4.5 and 5. Like, is that too high? Is that too low on an AAV? I don't really know how to pinpoint him exactly, but someone will pay him. I just don't know that the Canucks, especially with the really sizable raise that Philip Hronek is in for. And I got a ton of tweets from last week's appearance. Everyone telling me that I'm out to lunch. I keep the receipts. Just wait. I'm telling you, Philip Hronek, that number starts with an 8 all day long. And if you don't believe me, it just won't. It might not be in Vancouver, but it's definitely happening.
I love it.
That's why he's not in Detroit. Like, it's going to start with an 8.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Frank was taking a lot of heat for that last week. So I'm glad you brought that up, Frank. Keep your receipts. I love it. Frank, thank you so much for doing this, man. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, guys. And since I'm assuming, will we talk next week? And if not, have a great Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you and yours, man.
Brother.
See you guys.
See ya. All right. That was Frank Seravalli, brought to you by the Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor game.
Who is he taking heat from? How do people not realize that Hronek is going to start with an 8?
Yeah, like that's...
I don't think that's shocking at all.
No, it's not shocking, but Irf, this is the conversation Harmon and I keep having is, like, the Canucks shouldn't pay him anything that starts with an 8.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that his number's not going to start with an 8.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. But now the conversation shifts to, Okay, so the Canucks are going to sign that paycheck for a guy who we haven't seen hold his own on a pairing. We have not seen it yet.
He's playing with the league's best defenseman
That's
right
my
now.
point. So
he doesn't need to hold his own.
But okay, so if Quinn Hughes goes down and you've got this 8+ million guy who can't play by himself, come on.
Fair. I agree, but that's not where contracts are in this day and age.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And I think that's why this is a bigger conversation to have, because it's like, I don't know, they shouldn't trade him, but
no, they're not going to trade him. They traded for him.
All Harmon and I have been saying is just make him play by himself. And then you'll have like a sample size that you can bring into negotiations if you're the Canucks, be like, this is what it looked like when this guy played by himself.
That's fair. And then he's going to say, look at what I did and look at what we did together when I was with Quinn Hughes.
Yeah, and then I would say, look what Ethan Bear did with Quinn Hughes. Look what Noah Juleson. Look what Luke Shen. Anybody who plays with Quinn Hughes is going to do well.
Doesn't matter. At this point, we're talking about Phil Roenick.
You're right.
Ethan Bear got $4 million. He's going to get about that in Washington or wherever it is.
He signed. He already signed.
Signed yet.
No, he's not signed yet. But it's reported at 2 years, $2 million.
He just did a press conference with them.
He's going to sign when I think he's fully ready to go, because there's some insurance thing from the World Championship last year.
I know. I was like, did I miss something? Because he was
doing media availability.
Yeah, I saw him do a skate.
It's definitely the insurance
and
thing.
He had a bit of a spicy take about how, they not only needed him here, they wanted him here. So read between the lines on how you want. Just back to Irf's point, I could totally see, and especially with Alan Walsh as the agent, that's another wrinkle in all of this, is that when they go to negotiate, he's going to say to Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford, Quinn Hughes has never been at this level before.
Yeah.
Now, how much is that because he finally has, an elite defenseman to work with? Hey, I'm just playing you devil's advocate.
You're right.
Right?
Alan Walsh would say that. You're right.
So his jobs to do. He's an agent.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm just saying that's a load of crap.
Pump those tires.
Come on. Like, are we really throwing out the take that, oh yeah, Philip Roenick has really elevated Quinn Hughes? Quinn Hughes couldn't do this.
Did Quinn Hughes have this many points at this point last season?
No,
with not playing with Philip Roenick.
No,
there
but
you go. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
You're right. You're right.
Remember,
this is all going to be brought up for negotiations.
Remember here.
Yeah. Go on.
Luke Shen got a nice contract from Nashville playing with Quinn Hughes.
Yep.
So
Quinn Hughes can get everybody paid.
Yeah,
I know. Quinn Hughes
royalty checks are coming in.
Yeah, there was. We've had some listeners who really thought Noah Juleson was the answer because of what he did with Quinn Hughes. And look, start of the year, we're like, oh, maybe Cole McWard can do it.
You got to be able to play.
And the chat's buzzing right now. I asked, is Hronek worth $8 million? You're getting people saying no, he's not even worth $7 million.
I love it.
I totally agree. Hronek will get 8 or more, 7.5. He's worth 8+ on this team, but they can't afford him. So. Okay. Shout out to the chat. They're always got some,
we got a lot of people in the chat. If you're new, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when we go live. It is Monday to Friday at 2 p.m. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.